Okay, let's get going. That last session was pretty mind-numbing and exciting all at the same time, wasn't it? What an amazing world we're going into with AI and all of the applications that we're going to be enjoying with that over the next few years. We're joined today by four outstanding leaders and successful people in our industry that I've known for a very long time, with the exception of Brad. And we just had the, I guess, 2-year mark of working with you all. So it's been a real exciting firm to work with a lot of really cool brands. It's Brad Giles with Savory out of Salt Lake. And I'm going to let each of the panelists give their bio, if you will, instead of me reading it to you. Next to him is somebody that we know very well, very dear to our heart, Kaylann Ryann. Kaylann started at Falcon in the real estate industry and has grown into quite an accomplished real estate executive now on the landlord side. She went to the dark side. Sorry, Eric. And she has some incredible resume talents to share with everyone. To my left is M Mendez with Whole Foods. I've enjoyed working with her for 3 years now since she joined, and she's been just outstanding. And of course, everybody that knows me knows how much I value the Whole Foods relationship. And this man over here I've known far longer than I may want to say, but Eric Seitz with the Seitz Group is a very, very accomplished developer in multiple states, from the Carolinas to New Mexico, I guess, and I'm going to let him tell you about his accomplishments as well. So with that, why don't we start with ladies first, and Kaylann, love to hear from you first, and then Ann, and I'll hand you the mic.
Can everyone hear me? Sounds like yes. So I've been in the business for 18 years. I actually cut my teeth as a broker with Tim and Michael at Falcon Realty Advisors. I was mainly doing landlord rep for them, and then decided, I was working with like Kimco. Actually, I worked for Eric too, Inland and like Weber. We did a bunch of those properties, and then I decided to switch over to the tenant side, and I did that for probably about 10 years. One of my favorite groups I was in-house with was Front Burner Restaurants. I'm sure you're familiar with 60 Vines, Whiskey Cake, Ida Claire, Velvet Taco, just a few of them, Mexican Sugar. I think when I started, there was maybe a dozen concepts or a dozen locations amongst many concepts. And we grew that to over 100. So that was a fun ride. Did that for quite a while. And then I decided to join the dark side. And I've been with Brookfield Properties now for 5 years, and kind of found a nice little niche doing specifically restaurant, entertainment. And I oversee 7 states, about 25 regional assets, so like the big malls, 1 million, 2 million square feet for them. And that's been a fun ride. It's kind of been a really well-balanced view of every part of the deal, from the tenant side to the landlord side, from the broker's perspective. So kind of a nice 360 view of the deal through my career.
So I'm Ann. Is it on? I'm M Mendez. I am currently with Whole Foods. I started my career at Target in the legal department as an attorney, and did that for 8 years. And I knew everything about a lease or an REA or a purchase agreement, but I had no idea where the economics came from. They were handed to me by the business person. So when I got the opportunity to switch over and become a deal maker, I thought, well, why not? This could be fun, and if I hate it, I'll go back to being an attorney. And needless to say, I never looked back. I really found my niche, mostly representing retailers throughout my career. I was at Barnes & Noble for 12 years. I worked at JCPenney for a couple of years. Have really enjoyed being at Whole Foods for the last 3 years, but I too took a small tour to the dark side. I was a landlord for a couple of years, and then the really dark side, 2 years as a broker. And that's, and you know what though? It's very interesting because it gives you so many different perspectives that I still use in my job today, but have always really had a passion for representing retailers, expanding their brands, and I really enjoy it.
That's great. Brad?
My name is Brad Giles of Savory. Savory is a restaurant development and growth group. We currently have 8 brands, 186 units with 39 delivered this year, 54 additional restaurants that will go into 12 states for next year. My background for a dozen years was in finance, specifically real estate finance, and then I switched over to owner's rep with Savory, and we have, as I mentioned, 8 brands. We have 2 going out, 2 coming in, and that's really our model. We take restaurant brands that are the new cool kids on the block, the new emerging brand. We will buy them. We'll add the right people, processes, and systems, operations first. And then we have also within our group our own fund, and then we fund our own growth.
That's great. You want to mention some of the brands under your umbrella?
Yeah, so we have Swig, Mobetta's Hawaiian Style, Hash Kitchen, Sicilian Butcher, Saigon Hustle, R&R Barbecue, Pincho out of Miami. I think that's it.
It's fantastic. All right, Eric.
I'm Eric Seitz. Started in 1988, so I'm probably the oldest guy in the room. And we've built 61 shopping centers from the Carolinas through New Mexico. Great majority of them in Texas, approximately 8 million square feet so far. We've been very blessed with having good relationships with tenants, and they whisper to us where they want to go, and sometimes it's just finding the right markets and site. But it's been a fun ride. It's gotten harder today to do things, we all know, but there's still a lot of value to be had in this group with all the different disciplines. Retail's hot again and probably never really left, but there's a lot to do out there still. It's in pockets. Anyways, thanks.
Yeah, Eric's one of the more accomplished developers that we've had an opportunity to work with over the years, and I always joke because his site plans I can pick out of a stack because they are perfectly, simply drawn. I mean, he just gives the tenants almost everything they need, and you can see that he's almost hand-drawn them himself, and it just works. It works really well, and we've had a pleasure of working with him over the years. We've built some shopping centers for you, leased some, and he outsources all of his work, so we always like landlords and developers that outsource all of their marketing and work. So this session is about best practices. It's about some of the challenges as a tenant or as a landlord developer that they're facing in the market today, and how we all can be the best in class at what we do and supporting them and what not to do. And so we're going to take a run through some do's and don'ts, and we're also going to start off with some challenges. So I think on the tenant side, I'd like to start with what are some of the biggest challenges that you're currently experiencing in sourcing and closing opportunities today?
I'll say something. So something you all can't really control, but cost of the real estate. Real estate is more scarce. There's less new real estate coming online because of interest rates, and more than just interest rates. Banks can't lend sometimes even to qualified individuals or businesses because the federal auditors won't allow them to do it because their portfolio is too exposed to that certain asset class. So I think just supply and demand, right? Scarcity. There's not that much product coming on the market. There was a lot of product, especially in densely populated areas, that has come off the market to be refurbished, and now it's kind of stuck somewhere between the taking it off of market to refurbish it and putting it back on market. So scarcity is leading to cost increases in real estate that are huge.
And I would echo that 100%. I told Tim when we were talking about getting ready for the panel, this is the first year I went to ICSC and I was not pitched a new development. And that was really an eye-opener to me. I kept thinking, gee, my pipeline seems a little slim, but always people bring me their new product at ICSC. And I didn't see one. And so when we came back, I asked the whole team at Whole Foods, I said, how many new developments did you guys see in Las Vegas? And nobody saw a new development in Las Vegas. The only person who saw something remotely new, they said, well, there was going to be a scrape and rebuild, but now the developer's trying to figure out how to repurpose what is there because they think it will be less expensive. So that scarcity of opportunity is huge. We're trying to sign 30 leases this year and 30 leases next year. And our biggest problem is going to be where are the sites coming from?
And I would ask the same question, Kaylann, of you for existing space. What are some of the challenges you all are facing as an owner-operator, because you really don't develop, property, but you do manage and lease and market everything from pad sites to existing space. So what have been some of the challenges for you all?
I mean, it's not very different. We're struggling with inventory. We're having to think really creatively with our centers. The second gen stuff, I didn't lose much over COVID. I didn't get much back, to my surprise. And Texas especially has been a strong economy, so even less so there. But really just thinking creatively, second gen spaces are pretty much gone, at least the good ones. So we're trying to think of, like, maybe there's a pad site we can untangle. Maybe there's a retail space that we can convert. Just any way that we can find more room for restaurants in our centers. We're really trying to fight those battles. But then we're also, we come up against cost and inflation and interest rates. And so when you're converting a retail space to restaurant, that obviously drives cost. So it's a double-edged sword. It's tough to find new spaces for restaurants. That's for sure. There's another point I was going to make, and it slipped my mind now. We do some development. But in Texas, which is a great economy, if we can't make it pro forma in Texas, that's a scary thing. There's a lot of demand, and we just can't make the pro formas work. So hopefully at some point those will come down, and we'll be able to do some more development.
That's a good segue to you, Eric. So you're building probably more than most people I know in the Metroplex, and some very large power centers anchored by Costco, et cetera. What are the challenges of you getting these things off the ground, and how have you overcome some of the obstacles that we're all facing right now on the construction and finance side?
We're blessed to be in Texas because we've had, a great economy. Even in 07 and 08, it dipped, but it picked right back up. We have, probably the most activity we've seen with boxes in years, just because that surplus is gone. The amount per square foot per capita has gone way down. We've been extremely busy, but we've focused our effort on Texas and Oklahoma. And if you draw a rectangle on North, DFW, basically through there, the home growth is stupendous. The job growth is amazing. I read something yesterday that we added 16,000 new jobs to DFW just last month. So, I mean, we have this great market, but we also have probably the toughest market that I've seen in 33 years. We have cost issues that are still unabated. We're for the first time, we're seeing 9 bidders instead of 3. So we're seeing that numbers might come down, but we haven't really seen it yet. We're seeing the supply chain start to unkink, where you can actually get transformers in 36 weeks, and it was 50. And all that's offset by this go-go mentality of get me stores. So and then here's another thing no one ever talks to you about. There's a reason why deals take so long, because permitting, y'all know, takes forever. And it's because we have a lot of young people. A lot of people left in 08, 09, and they retired. And so we have a lot of young people. They're smart. They're working their way through it, but they need help. We have, we are seeing real problems with things that are technical that you guys don't care about, but like water, sewer, storm. It was easy to develop in previous years. I mean, I say easier, maybe it's never been easy, but now it's hard, because now when you go in and you're going to build 400,000 feet, and you're all excited because you got the boxes and you got this great site and you're starting to get transportation and access and all those things, then you realize, oh crud, I got to take 20% and set aside for green space and ponds. And so all of a sudden your pro forma is starting to really leak, and you're getting really uncomfortable, and it's just this constant barrage of things. But all that said, we're in a great place, and we have opportunities. It's just solving these challenges. And it's just one last thing. When I first got started, my mentor handed me a book that ICSC created, and it was about development. And there was a handout in it. And he went looking through the book, and I'm young and stupid. And I'm like, I got this. This is okay. But then I looked at the handout, and I rolled it out, and it was 22 feet long. And every half inch was an item on there of things you could theoretically have to do and solve. And so you're starting to solve more of that 22 feet now, because every single phase of it is hard to get done. So, we're blessed. We've got almost 2 million square feet that we're working on now. It's all great credit. But if the pie's not baked a certain way right now, it's not going to get done. So for you to help us is to bring us those ingredients that are well thought out. Credit, do you have the option to buy? What is it that you want? Because you're helping us get it all done. And we all have to really work together to understand what the constraints are, how long it takes, and what I need. Selfishly, what I need you to do for me.
No, that's really good. And in fact, that's probably a good segue over to the tenant side, because I know as challenging as it is for him, we've run into a lot of challenges, have we not, here of late, and I know you have as well, on tenants getting their store numbers to work for the development, the finish out, the rents. So I think it'd be good for everyone to understand, as we just did on landlord, what are the tenants' challenges with these construction costs and all of the new things that have come up on permitting and things that are obstacles for you as well.
That's a really long list, probably more than 22 feet. Definitely just supply chain issues. We're starting to see things get a little bit better, but just the time. This is my perfect example. I have been at Whole Foods almost 3.5 years. I have not opened a store that I've worked on since inception. That will not happen until the middle of next year. So when you have that long of a lead time from, and P.S., it takes about a year from the time we first go look at a site until I can get it in the room into committee because of all the things, the internal hoops that we have to go through. We have a very collaborative process at Whole Foods. I have to go see it. Operations has to go see it. Research has to go see it. And what that leads to is when you get in the room at real estate committee, you have a whole bunch of people who have seen the site and can speak to it, but that takes a lot of time. So as time marches on, what happens? Costs go up. Not only the construction costs, but we certainly have seen huge cost increases on the labor side too. And I've actually never seen anything like this at any other retailer, but our pro forma is constant, as Tim well knows, is constantly evolving. And so it's like a deal that worked on Friday might not work on Monday if we just got new numbers, and we have to factor that in. And in a way, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because we have no idea what the numbers are going to be when the store opens in 3 years, but we have to make our best educated, informed decision based on what we know today. So the challenge, there is no shortage of challenges to work through. And then once you get the deal in the room, it's really, that's my job. I have to present it to the executive committee, but it's their decision. What, is my opportunity a good use of our capital, or is it better to deploy that capital to do something else? So it's fun though. It's problem solving. So you keep finding ways to skin the cat.
No, I agree very much with what Ann said. Those are well-articulated comments, and she really said what I would say there. I'll shift gears just a little bit and say those are the problems. Those are some of the challenges. What can we collectively do about it? I'll tell you where you can help, and hopefully I don't offend you, but I'm just going to speak honestly here. Most brokers that I work with, after a deal is struck, they become casual sideline observers. They're just waiting for me and our group to finish. There's a lot that you can do. If you want to be better than a 50% agent, you're going to have to constantly learn. You're going to have to be better every day at what you do. But how can you help? You can dive in and be more than just a personal assistant saying, here is a copy of the lease back. Tell me what you think after you read it. You can dig in and you can help. You can shorten the timeline and you can make it a lot easier for both sides. You can make it easier for the developer landlord. You can definitely make it easier for Ann and I on the tenant side. Learn where you can create value, not just helping somebody find a property and then saying, call me when it's commission time. And again, I don't mean to be blunt, but that happens a lot. You can very much help the transaction process, you can make it easier, you can shorten it, and you can make it better for both sides if you are an active participant rather than an observer. And we can talk about some of those things.
Yeah,
that they
no,
can do.
that's actually a great segue. We've kind of given a little bit of an overview of what each panelists do, what the challenges are about what they're doing, the opportunities that they see and are taking advantage of. So that's blocking and tackling for everyone here on a day-to-day basis. So now let's get into the nitty-gritty and the dirty stuff of being very transparent and honest with everyone in this room, because we're all trying to get better. We're all trying to be the 1%ers in our industry. And it's hard. It's a hyper-competitive business. It's got a ton of Erics and Savories and not too many Whole Foods, but retailers and brands and certainly big landlord owners like Kaylann represents. And I know there's an important question I want to ask you to start off so we can jump into some best practices, if you will. And I'll ask you this. How important is the integrity relationship with your broker? And expound on that if you could.
It's everything, right? I'll tell you this. When you start managing to your commission, I know it. I feel it. And maybe I'll start by saying this. Who can finish the saying for me? This is moving around in popular culture today, movies, books, T-shirts. Everybody wants to be a gangster until... Come on, somebody. Until it's time to do gangster stuff. Right? Everybody wants to be a 1%er until it's time to do 1%er stuff. Your fiduciary responsibility, and I'll just start in the state of Texas. You have a fiduciary responsibility when an agency relationship is created for you to represent me. What does that mean? It means that the interests of the client come first. And I want you all to make $1 million a year. I want you to be successful. I want you to earn mega commissions. But when your interests come before mine, and I can feel it, and Ann can feel it, and I'm sure the others can too, as soon as it starts to happen, I don't say anything because it's what I have to deal with. But I promise you I can feel it when your interests start to come first. When that happens, you're not creating value for me, and you are replaceable.
No, that's great. Let's just keep going on that. Kaylann, you have brokers that bring you opportunities all the time representing tenants. Speak to the integrity of that relationship as a landlord owner.
Yeah, I think the conversations I have with brokers, I mean, sometimes they're pretty novice and they call looking for information. And I'm happy to share information, but when they don't want to share the information, I'm like, what tenant are you working with? What cuisine is it? I need to know that I've got room in my center for you and I don't have another competing brand. And sometimes the tenants or the brokers will not share that information. That's the most frustrating thing. Like, how do you expect me to share information when you're not going to reciprocate? So that's a big no-no. Those conversations don't end well. If you're calling and you're looking for just a comp, maybe you don't have real interest, but you need a comp. You're putting together some comps for your tenant. Open book that with me. I am more than happy to give somebody that's straightforward with me information because I've been there. I understand it. And the other thing is know your tenants. When you call, I'm going to ask questions about these tenants. I want to know what their average unit volume is. When we're into the LOI, I want to know what are these guys spending on their build out because we're talking about TI. What's their credit worthiness like? Know your tenants. Be able to speak to your tenants. Don't have to go back and ask those questions. Saves a lot of time. It builds a lot of credibility. Those are just some of the things that I've found that are very helpful in the broker conversations that I've had.
And speaking to the integrity of the broker's relationship with the tenant, as Brad said, it's everything. I mean, most of the brokers that represent Whole Foods have had the account for more than 20 years. Have you had it more than 20? Yeah, fingers crossed. And we really consider those people part of our team. They are an extension of staff for Whole Foods. So but I have had the experience that Brad mentioned at other retailers where you know if someone is no longer putting the client's interest first. And that has to be everything because it can't be about one deal. It has to be about a long-term relationship and building that, don't bring me something that you wouldn't put your own name on, right, to see if it will stick. You know better. You know if it's right. If you know your client and you know what their needs are, you bring it to me and you tell me why you support it and why you would be willing to stand up in front of the CEO and the CFO and tell them why we should spend the company's capital on it, because that's what you're asking me to do. And I have said, I don't think I've ever said this to you, but I've said this to other brokers. I'm like, you want me to go put this in front of the CEO and defend it? And that's usually the end of that conversation. So
Well, and Eric, you outsource all of your product and have for decades, as far as I can remember, on leasing. So speak to the integrity of the listing broker for you.
I realized early on I was a really terrible manager of people on a day-to-day basis. I like working with go-getters. I like working with people who have the energy, who've done their homework, and they bring me something. I'll give you an example. We use pretty much the same brokers all the time, but we're open to anybody that calls, and they're polite. They know what they're talking about, and they pitch me quick. Here's what I got. I'm not going to go around you. I don't have time or any of that stuff. But a guy called me yesterday, and all he wanted to talk about was the price of the 13 acres. And it's a great piece of property, very, very much in a trade area that we might look at, and we kind of know what some tenants are doing. But all he wanted to talk about was the price. He didn't want to talk about the time it takes to get there, how long it would take to get roadway things done. He didn't want to talk about any of that. He wanted to make his deal. Don't call me back if you can't put a 2 in front of the number. Okay, bye. So what I told him was, he was young, I could tell. I said, I tell you what you do. If you're willing to spec me the site plan, I don't sleep well as I get older, and I'll be up at 5 in the morning with coffee, and I'll play with it and draw on it and do some back of the napkins, and I'll call you back. I may even send you a text. Yeah, I'm interested or no, I'm not. Because while everything is really complicated to get it done, when you've been doing it as long as some of us have, you kind of know if the deal fits. And those quickie numbers can tell you, you're way off. That number's got a 1 in front of it, and it's a low 1. It's not a 2. But that helps me because I want to look at all deals. I'm a deal junkie. I love looking at deals and site planning them, But be prepared. Ask for the right things. It's not about always the pricing. It's about, can you get the deal done? If I like a restaurant tenant and I really think that they're great, we will lower our pricing to get that deal to happen because mix is critical. Is it somebody that's missing? We used to build things and build it and they will come. I don't know if it was ever like that, but we had a lot of demand. We still have a lot of demand, but projects are different. They have to, for me, every project we've done the last 5-7 years has had food, first and foremost, restaurants, entertainment, good retail, best in class, because you can't finance it otherwise. You might as well do the first in class or look at something else. We look at medical, we look at office. We don't stack it. We integrate it together. We try to make everything work so it blends. And you got to have all those 4 or 5, fitness, entertainment, movies, Dave and Buster's. You got to have all that stuff because you want to bring them to the intersection continually because that's what it's going to take to get the equity and the debt to pay attention to it. So it's changed. And if you guys know that, then you look at my site plan and you go, hey, I could bring site something over here. I got that. Let me call him. That's what I want.
And just to expound a little bit on how much you don't like managing people, how many W-2 employees do you have?
2.
And you have how many square feet under development?
Over 2 million.
I've never known him to have more than 2 employees. And it's interesting because in Dallas we have, some of the most accomplished retail developers anywhere. And people like Eric Seitz and John Weber and Jim Strode and a few others develop 20, 30 target anchored centers, millions of feet that Eric had. They got no employees. They got 2 or 3 people. I don't know how they do it, but I know
Get to
you.
fire the bad ones.
I know you do it with a little bit of intensity because I've been on the receiving end of that, and you're very good at keeping people in line, and you reach the goals, and you're very, very good at telling the tenant what they have to have or else, and I've been on the receiving end of one of those before, but it works, and it's positive. So if someone in this room was trying to get your attention to get a listing on your property, what do they need to do, and what do they need to do to keep it once they get it?
Professional sales call, short and sweet. Send me something by email that you've done that you're proud of, and just always be very kind of considerate in how you use somebody's time. I don't mean this in a negative way, but the women in our business seem to understand how to do that better than the guys. So go to school on that, because this isn't a bromance thing going on. This is business. So send me something short and sweet. Tell me who you are, but don't waste my time. If I like it, I'll text back, hey, I'm interested. Give me, send me. And I probably won't return a call until I feel comfortable that I want to talk to you and ask you specific questions. But I was young once, and I know how it is to hustle, and I admire that. And I admire whether it's a tenant that's just starting out or a young broker who's trying to make some money for himself and create a name. I admire all that, but do it in a professional way. Do it in a way that gets our attention, and we want to call you back.
That's great. Thank you for that. You all got some really nice journals this morning and fairly nice pens. I would hope you're taking a lot of notes, because this is really valuable information to be better than when you came into this room. And let's keep this going. How does somebody get the attention of Whole Foods if they're wanting to represent you?
Do you want me to tell that?
Tell the answer.
You want me to tell that? Yeah. There's a story he wants me to tell.
We're all here to learn.
So, when I came to Whole Foods, as I said, there was already a very strong team of brokers, and truly, it is their account to lose. They have the history, they have the knowledge, they know what's been looked at and rejected and why would I replace that? I wouldn't. I would only replace it if someone is not doing their job. And so that has not happened at Whole Foods, but that did happen to me at a previous retailer I worked for, where submittals would come in very sloppy, demos would come in. This was my favorite thing. We always looked at 3, 5, and 10-mile demos, and somehow in 10 miles there were less people than there were in 5 miles. And that gave me a clue that the person had not perhaps been reviewing what they were sending me. And I had a conversation with this broker and said, don't send me something you haven't looked at. It's not acceptable to me. It needs to be right. Tim is very familiar with this, right? And so, meanwhile, a gentleman found a way to get himself introduced to me at an ICSC dinner, just said, hey, I know you work this market, I work in this market. If you ever want a second opinion, call me. I'd be happy to share, even though I know so-and-so is your broker. I'm like, great. And then the same guy, over the course of a year, occasionally would send me an article about something going on in the market. Hey, you might not have seen this. And retailers cover huge geographies. That's one thing that's really changed over the years. Our areas of responsibility have grown. So we can never be the experts about every corner in a market that the broker can be and that we need you to be. So he would send me things like that. And meanwhile, the situation with the other broker with the bad demos was becoming, sloppy LOIs and not following up and disappearing except for when it was time to get paid. And so ultimately, I made a decision to make a broker change. And I didn't put it out for bid, or I didn't have people come and pitch business to me. I already knew who I wanted. I wanted that person who had taken the time to come meet me, to get to know me, to try to provide me with information that was useful to me, and it was a super smooth transition. He got the account.
And how does he keep it?
by not doing all those other things I just described. But a little more on what we were talking about earlier about don't disappear when a deal goes into lease. And you know that, I mean, our lease negotiations are very lengthy and complicated, and our form lease is really lengthy and complicated. And so to have a broker be involved who can help, like Tim can go on a fishing expedition for me and say, look, we have this issue. We might be able to do it this way or that way. Go talk to them for me. Go see what you think is going to work. Or good cop, bad cop. He can go pound on the developer, sorry, Eric, and say they're not going to do it. They never do it. And then I can be the good guy and we can reach a compromise. But it's really critical to have your brokers stay with you through that lease negotiation process, because you can be really, really valuable in helping, problem solve and get through some of the tough issues quicker.
That's good. Brad, go ahead.
I would say the quickest way to lose my attention is to forward me somebody else's listing and say, hey, what do you think? and I talk about this a lot. That's my biggest pet peeve in the world. I don't know what to think. If it's in my home market, you can give me an intersection, and in 30 seconds I can tell you if I already have something there, if I want something there, and why I do or don't want something there. Outside of that, I need somebody in Dallas that knows everything that I know about my home market, that knows all the right people, that has all the right influence, that has the market respect, and can talk about any of my brands the way I would talk about it. You are my emissary in that market. I don't have time to attend every meeting, to be on every phone call, and to go work out every individual detail. And I echo a lot of what Ann said. At the end of the day, I can feel it if you're chasing a commission because you're working on this one deal right now. If you're looking a year or 2 or 5 years out, you become the top 1% broker. Your income is a factor of all the things that you became and did. Your income can't be primarily that. And if you do earn $1 million one year and you didn't earn the position by becoming that 1% broker, it won't happen again. And it certainly won't happen for decades and decades. So create value for your clients. Put their needs first. Understand where I'm doing business. I had 4 emails since I've been here, and I was here an hour and a half or so before we started talking. 4 emails for states that I don't work in, that I've never put a restaurant in, and I have no intention to put a restaurant in. Are you kidding me? In 10 or 15 minutes using the internet, you can find out everything you need to know about me, our company, our brands, and company brands, and you guys as well. You can find out anything you want to know. You can create a value proposition to say, I know these are your issues. I know this is what you're doing next year and beyond. I can help you in these areas. You have my attention. You know why? Because nobody does that.
That's great. And I hope you all are making notes to ask questions, because we're going to open it up to Q&A here in just a minute. And I can't imagine you not having questions for this panel. Kaylann, you're with a big organization, institutional. You've got bottom lines. You've got, the hurdles you have to meet, returns you have to obtain. It's frustrating sometimes as a broker, knowing that you're really driven by that bottom right corner of the page for an institution to make a decision. How well do the brokers that bring you proposals understand that side of the transaction and really speak to the economic model and trying to get into the weeds on that so that they can help be the bridge between you and the tenant that may be stuck on their own pro forma?
I don't think many understand the level that Brookfield analyzes a deal. They're in the thick of the retailer's financials. It's a 2-step committee process. There's a lot of chiefs, a lot of feedback, a lot of conversations. It's not an easy path. I always try to educate and let the younger brokers that are unfamiliar with our process understand the time-consuming. We're going to start here, but we're not going to get you a lease for 3 weeks. It's a bear. It's a lot. Sometimes it's a grind, but I've learned so much through the process. It's really interesting the way that they look at a transaction versus being a broker or a tenant. It's very nuanced.
And are you seeing a trend towards brokers that are better at their craft when they bring you a tenant? Or do you feel like the industry is flatlined somewhat?
Some are better. Some that we've done business with in the past understand it and get it, and they can be an asset to the process. For the most part, on the retail front, we don't involve a lot of brokers. It's more on the stuff that I do that brokers are involved. So those guys get it, and they're, I think, a little more fine-tuned when it comes to that level of real estate. The transaction's not like a strip center transaction. It's a big deal, and there's a lot of capital involved, and a lot of eyes are on it.
Let me add one thing, Tim.
Please.
Having done deals and currently doing deals with Brookfield, here's the value proposition. It's tough to get a deal done, and it takes time. But what if you're one of the few that does that? What if you invest the time over the course of a year and you get the attention of someone who is looking at a Brookfield property? You can make that pitch. You have a huge leg up on your competition. You can replicate that over and over and over where not everybody else can. There's value in doing those deals because you can replicate it with a tenth of the effort.
Eric, there's a lot of tenants that aren't Whole Foods Credit or Savory or Academy. How does, this is an added question, as somebody had asked me to present it, how does a broker bring you a non-credit, I wouldn't say like bad credit, but they could be a startup, an emerging brand, they've opened 1 or 2 stores, or maybe they've opened 5 or 6, but they're on a pretty healthy growth curve, but you've got to have what you got to have to bank the deals. What advice would you give a broker that's representing, maybe they're just starting out, and typically when you start out, you'll represent franchisees and hair salons and entrepreneur-owned retail shops. How do they get into a shopping center where you have such strict financial criteria attached to that thing?
Help me really like the tenant. Give me a reason why this emerging brand or restaurant or mom and pop deserves a break. We all know why you can't do it, but I've reached a place now in my career where some of the real fun things and satisfying are when we do something new with somebody and we see them succeed. It goes back to when I started, I had 2 nickels to rub together. So I admire those that are creating. I mean, I've spent my whole business career creating and being entrepreneurial. But bring me something quickly and get me excited about it, but don't bring me junk. Okay? Bring me something that actually works. If you'd eat there and the food is great, if they've got 1 or 2 of them and mom and pop are in the store every day, if it's a retailer that's got a really cool concept and they're not just trying to flip it out to private equity, bring me something that actually, where someone's heart and soul is in it, and that'll get you a second look. And then from there, we've even restructured things with tenants. Heck, during COVID, I took back 3 restaurants. I had a young broker bring me 3 other restaurants. They didn't have a pot to piss in, and I gave them all the equipment that we'd taken back because no one would come get it during COVID. So we were able to get them going, and to this day, they're doing very well. They're grateful. Heck, a couple of them might even be a new location soon for them, But I want to help. But don't bring me junk. Bring me something that actually's got a heart to it. And I'll bet you all of us are kind of like that. We've been there.
Oh, that's great. Well, I think we've covered a lot of best practices, challenges in the industry, challenges with just deal making. So let's open it up and let's have some questions for the panel, because I can't believe that this room wouldn't have more than one. Loretta, grab the box.
It's going to be a two-fold question.
Get the box.
Oh, I got a topic in the box. I was hoping I didn't have to do that. Okay, so this is going to be a question for Eric and Brad, and it's more of the deal making. So I work with a lot of national restaurants and even retailers, and some of the new development that's coming out of the ground, the way they're delivering the box these days are not even bringing utilities to the spaces. Eric, have you shifted your development in cutting back on what you deliver? And then the second question to Brad is, have you adjusted your work letter to fit into projects that you want to be into?
Sometimes what we don't do is because a municipality says, we don't want you to go in and put in grease traps. We want that to be a function that the restaurant does. So there's a few things like that, but The older I get, the more I want to control it. I want to know what your power is. I want to know, if you can sub-meter or not. I want to know these things because we've screwed ourselves so many times over the years making mistakes that you should learn from them. And the bottom line is we want to provide a one-stop shopping experience, but the other side of that is, as I get frustrated, you want the deal, but you're not telling me what your specs are. You're not responding to my team or architect's emails about, I need this, or I had to change the lease outline drawing because the fire marshal came back and wanted us to move the fire riser room. You've got to respond back, or else there may be a deal where we just say, we can't do 200 deals. Here's what you're going to get. And
So do you want to do deals in Virginia?
Carolinas. Some places are harder to do deals than other. I was arrogant and young, and I went up to New York and tried to do a deal for Circuit City. I crept back with my tail between my legs, and realized that I didn't have local knowledge. And what Brad said, it's really critical. Local knowledge means everything, whether it's Dallas or Tampa or wherever. If you bring me a deal, it doesn't matter where, but local knowledge. What do people do in this area? Do they want you to put in the grease trap? Do they want what can you actually get done? Be that person that helps, because all that does is move the deal along faster.
Yep. So the question of, have we adjusted our work letter to accept properties that are coming to us without utilities? 100% no. I will resist that like crazy. The more variables you leave to me cost me more time and more money. I can't underwrite the deals efficiently because I don't know the variables. I don't have the local knowledge. I don't know what you know. I will choose a property that Eric is delivering if I pay 30% more in rent because I know when I can open and I have a better idea of what it's going to cost me. So I will resist those deals forever.
That's what the tenants are doing on my side. Yeah.
They're smart.
Yep.
Anyone else? Throw the box to your left. There you go. There you go.
This question is, Brad, and I don't know if this is your area of expertise, but at Savory, what are the metrics or what are the characteristics when you guys see a concept that you want to partner or acquire to purchase? What are kind of those metrics that you're seeing out of those local restaurant brands or regional that make Savory excited to go after it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So real quickly, the brand has to have simple enough ownership that it's not a nightmare to untangle for us to buy it. We're going to have to buy at least a super majority because we're going to be putting the money behind it eventually. The opportunities that we're looking for are emerging brands that are successful. We don't turn brands around. That have replicated at least once, mainly so they know how hard that is, and that we believe has legs to grow for 10 years under the current iteration of what that brand is. So the sweet spot for us is 2 to maybe 12 or 15 units. They need more than just capital. We have our own capital, not where we started, but we are a private equity fund now. We have a sister company that's a private equity fund that just funds acquisition and growth for us. So we're looking for emerging brands that are already successful, and they need more than just capital. We will come in and add the right people, processes, and systems. We will do a heavy lift for 3 to 5 years, and then position them for harvest where somebody else will own them. Does that answer the question?
Are the restaurants, are they smaller, fast casual? Are they more complex, casual themed, sit down, larger formats? Is there a sweet spot in GLA with your restaurants that you're looking for, or what the total sales is?
It's opportunity based. So we have our Swig brand. They can operate in 600 square feet, and they're a drive-through only. We have Sicilian Butcher, who can operate in up to 6,000 feet, and average unit volume is over $7 million. So it's anything in between. We are careful not to replicate something we already have to create competition. So we want that variability across the spectrum, but we're opportunity based.
Anybody else? Maddie?
Oh, or it's on.
It's on.
It's on?
Should be on,
Oh, it's
yeah.
on. Hello.
First of all, I just want to thank you guys for being here and sharing such great insight with us, especially for myself and as well as, Tim had mentioned in the beginning, a third of us in this room are brokers under 5 years. So very, very novice to the business and kind of just wanted to gain insight. I know all of you had spoke about this, you touched on it, but kind of top of mind, what is the number one piece of advice that you could provide for us all, specifically the younger and newer people in the business that can allow us to set ourselves apart from others and serve as best in class, top performer, from all avenues, from the landlord side as well as tenant side?
I have two things that I would tell you that I tell to anybody that I mentor or work with or train in this business. The first one that Brad mentioned earlier, do your homework. You can find out so much about anybody. It's kind of creepy, right? But with a really simple Google search, you can find out who our brokers are. You can find out what our size requirement is. You can find out what our demographic requirement is. That doesn't take a lot of work, but it's important work. And if you're going to send a tenant an opportunity, we didn't get to this, but the easiest thing you could do is tell me where my closest store is, because then I can get oriented in a heartbeat versus I'm not going to waste my time trying to figure out where this is. You may know it like the back of your hand, but I don't. So be sure, to make it really easy for the tenant to get oriented clearly. But the main thing I would speak to for somebody new in this business is you have one reputation, and it will follow you your entire career. So don't ever give up your integrity to get a commission, because it will haunt you. I can tell you everybody in this business who's ever not done something they told me they were going to do. Now, fortunately, I can count that on one hand, but it will follow you. So that's, the most important thing. Do what you say you're going to do.
I'll add
Thank
just
you.
a little bit to that. I think your question is great. I would say you are in a great spot with a lot of amazing opportunity, right? The sky is the limit. Whatever value you can create, you'll be compensated for. There are not a lot of professions and places where you can employ your time where that's true. I echo what Ann said. Find out how you can create value for your client or your prospective clients. Know what they need, know what they're missing, and find a way to deliver that. Deliver that value, and you'll never search for clients for very long. You can earn, honestly, whatever you want. The sky's the limit, and you're in a great spot. There's not a lot of places where that's true.
I think the fact that you're asking the question, it says a lot. You want to learn, and that's the one thing that you can't teach is that initiative. If you want to be good, you will be. I would also suggest that you pick a product type, you pick something within that product type, and you really own it and know it. So that when you call, it's very clear to me that you know what you're talking about. You're the person then that I want to text back and say, yeah, send me this stuff. And then from there, we get to what kind of person you are, all those other things that make a good salesperson. But you got to want it. And that's the key.
That's great. Kaylann, other than starting out at Falcon, what else would you add to
I would say one of my favorite mentors taught me how to be resourceful, and this is Randy DeWitt at Front Burner. If there was something that he didn't know, he would find the expert in the field and take them to lunch. That was critical to my growth. That was super helpful. And then the other thing I would say is relationships and networks are critical. Every single job I've had since Falcon was because I knew somebody, they knew me, they reached out. It was never just a cold interview. It's all about face-to-face with people, getting to know them, take them to lunch, grabbing coffee. Network is huge.
And when you worked a long time ago on one of my projects, the one thing I noticed about her, she was always on time. She cared about my time, and that made a difference. Her and a couple of the ones that worked with you guys were always on time. Meetings went fast. We got things done, and we moved on to the next.
My husband would disagree.
Yeah, I'll add one more thing to that. To try to summarize a lot of what we've talked about, the lowest form of a pitch is to talk about the features of your service, right? I work hard. I have a can-do attitude. My brokerage is really big. I don't care. Those are features. Better than features are to talk about the benefits. My brokerage and I do this and have done this. That means this to you. That means that I can do this for you. Those are benefits. Still not the top tier. Find where you can take the features and the benefits and turn it into a value that's relevant to me. You don't have to worry about anything that happens in this market. Again, you know how you need 14 stores to open over the next 18 months? I got you. And here's where we're going to start, and here's what I have for you today. Bring value, not just features and benefits.
Wow, that was spectacular framing for that advice. Thank you for that. I was going to ask if, and this will be the last question, but let me just keep it open. Who else has a question? I want it to come from out here, not me.
I have a quick question.
Please.
More for the landlords, Eric, Kaylann. In these crazy capital markets, what yield on cost do you need to hit to green light a deal right now, if you could say that?
I don't think it's ever changed. It's gone up and down. But generally, I want a pure 200 basis points of profit. So if in years gone by, we were building at 8.5, we never really got below 8.5. We got burned, and it has to be the real yield. So we open book a lot with our stuff so people can see why we're coming to our yield, because you learn and you understand that we're being honest with you about things. It's not rocket science. If I can do it on the back of a napkin, any of you guys can do it too. You just got to learn it. Take the time, learn it. And again, it's show me where that 200 basis points of profit is, right? We're squeezing now. Rates are at 8.5. We just signed a loan today at 8.5. Oh, awful. A year ago it was 4.5. But again, rents are going up. Costs are going up. Show me how we can get that spread to work. And it can be a lot of ways. Maybe less rent, less TI. I don't know. We're open to anything. We're not geniuses on our side of the table besides what we tell you. But truthfully, 200 basis points of spread is really there. And it's been there since I started in 1988 and where I am today.
My answer is a non-answer because it's so deal specific, center specific. We may be upside down in one asset and I have no cash to give. Those deals are hard to pencil. Another center may be Block and Terra, phenomenal project to work on. I've got money to spend. It's really just deal specific. Credit's a big part of it. Like that's just it's hard to answer that question.
Just one quick follow-up for Eric. You said 200 basis point spread. How are you evaluating the cap rate to spread off of today?
I evaluate credit first and foremost. Like I said earlier, first in class is critical. You can't build anything now without having, if you're going to do the retail component, there's some mix of out parcels, shops, and anchors. Then there's a mix of entertainment or a fitness and all that. But the first and foremost thing that we want to look at, if it's beyond, I would say, a mom and pop tenant or a shops, is we're really focused on credit. And how are they doing? We don't have any debt on our balance sheet. Well, we've all gone through this private equity buyout thing. I had 10 Academy deals and they sold from the Gotchman family, and I'm developing them, and they go to KKR, and that guy calls and says, I'm not giving you any more financial statements. Well, you kind of have to because it's in the lease. Well, I'm not going to. And they went and borrowed $2 billion. So all of a sudden you've gone from this great family-owned business to this private equity behemoth who doesn't give a crap about you. And, so it is a relationship business. And I would, with a beer, I'll tell you how we got back at them later. But the bottom line, that day was scary because you realize, but it fundamentally changed. I've had smaller retailers call and say, well, we're debt-free. That's great. But I also know you had a history of leveraging up in bad times. I want you to tell me the story as why it's changed. I'm big on regenerating yourself and getting second chances, but after a while, you better have a really compelling story to tell, or we're going to revert back to, what does Moody say? Okay? What will my bank lend on? You know, now's not the time to be trying a lot of neat stuff unless it's a really compelling story.
I have to tell a real quick story on Eric, because he mentioned Kaylann being on time and he mentions on time a lot. And let me tell you how important it is for Eric to be on time. And this is critical as a tenant rep broker, which is the world I've lived in my whole career. And I have been fortunate enough to represent Petco since the early to mid 90s. And it's a positive story. It shows how good you are at holding to your word. We were negotiating a deal in Abilene, Texas, if I'm not mistaken, and there was a particular real estate person at Petco that had been at Petco for decades and not really in real estate. Somehow she ended up in real estate, and she kind of worked at her own pace, did her own thing whenever she was ready, and Eric said from day one, I have to have this lease to get my project financed. I have to have it with the others. It's all going in by X date. I need it here by X. And she procrastinated a little longer, and Eric started to get a little more verbal and was being pretty insistent. Tim, I have a signed lease on my desk from PetSmart. If it's not here by Friday, and this was, I think, a Monday or Tuesday, I'm signing the PetSmart lease. Period. And I'm ringing the phone off the wall to try to get that lease back to Eric's hands, which was already approved, in for signature, just sitting on a stack of to-dos. And I left her a message. He's not bluffing. He will sign PetSmart on Friday if it's not in his hands on Friday. Come Friday morning, the phone rings. Tim, FedEx hadn't shown up. I'm signing PetSmart. I called, and she said, that's ridiculous. I put it in FedEx. It'll be there on Monday morning. I didn't want to send it for Saturday. I said, no, Martha, Friday was the deadline. That's today. And he will sign PetSmart. And he did. And I couldn't fault him for it. But as tenant rep broker, if you're not helping to manage the flow, if you're not adding value by getting the deal to completion, and that includes, in Carrick's case, in his hands when he says so, or else. And I'm not the only victim to that. I'll say victim just because I can. I'm not the only broker that's been in that situation with Eric, but he's done it before, and you know what? I respect the hell out of him for that.
But it goes
tells
back
me
to your
how to get
word,
it
right?
done.
You're giving me your word, and we're going and spending a lot of money. You know, if Brad says, I got 5 concepts, we're going to do it, and we spend the money architecturally, and we get everything ready, then, you know, it starts to get really expensive at the end of a deal. Do you guys know that? I mean, the last money that goes into a development deal is hugely, and you know, it's a bit of gambling, because you're already $1 million in, and you got to go put that really expensive option for $200,000. It's not $50 anymore. Now it's really going up because the seller hates your guts. He's tired of it. He's heard you talk forever. It's you know, are you going to close Seitz? Are you full of it? And that last money that's going in is kind of like it's gambling. It's gambling. And I tell young guys or girls when they call me and say they want to be a developer, I say, fine, that's fantastic. You'll be good. But you need to go home to your spouse and you need to ask her, honey, I love this deal. I know you've been on my side. I'm going to put our last $25,000 into this deal. Are you with me? If she throws up her hand, starts crying, and calls her mom, you're in deep shit. Okay? If she says, all right, I loved you for the whole process, then you got a chance. But no matter how well you do, it just gets more expensive, it gets more time consuming, and probably, for me, the most important thing, Tim stayed in it the whole way, even to get the bad news. That says a lot about him. You know, if I've got a deal, I talk to him, you know. That's what you guys got to do. You got to get to the point where you understand, if I'm a little short with you, but the lease is dragging by 4 months, there's a reason. It's getting expensive. We got to close.
A little short.
And don't lie. If you ever get in front of somebody who's doing this, never lie and never obfuscate. Always do what you tell your children. Own it. Tell the truth. I accept mistakes. I accept things that go wrong. Believe me, I've made a few myself. But what I won't accept is somebody sitting in front of me and bullshitting me or lying to me. That's when the bad Eric comes out, and I get a little like, all right, well, I'm going to see how much I can twist. Okay? So.
He can twist really hard.
I've seen the #1 Whole Foods in Dallas 7 times. They're all #1. That's the #1 Whole Foods. 22 minutes later, that's the #1 Whole Foods. They're slaying it. They're not. It's not the #1 Whole Foods. That one was.
That one was, and that one over there.
Know what you're saying. Don't hyperbolize.
Yeah.
Yes, so true, so true. Anybody else? We're going to wrap up. Michael.
Just real quick, to that story, when is following up with your tenant too much? Like in that instance, where you're calling Petco every single day, hey, this is what's happening. What does the rep think, and when do they think it's too much of a follow-up?
Oh, that's a question
Yeah.
for Ann and
Yeah.
go ahead, either one. Brad.
I'm going to venture to say that no broker has ever had to do that with me. So, yeah, I know. I mean, Tim and I have a standing weekly call so that we can check in on all the stuff we have in the works. And then we will sometimes talk 2 or 3 or 4 more times during the week.
Even when there's not a lot to talk
Even
about
when there's-
on Monday's call, it's just a quick check.
It's okay. It's a check-in just to see, and that way too, I can tell them which way the wind is blowing at Whole Foods this week, which might be, completely the opposite of the way the wind was blowing last week. So it's really never too much, in my opinion.
Brad?
Yeah, I agree that it's never too much. I will say that a lot of times I feel like brokers do get a little bit lazy when it's not an emergency. And we have a Monday weekly call, and we went through our pipeline, and 2 days later, I'll get multiple texts or emails saying, hey, the landlord followed up again. Like, I already told you where we are and what's going to happen. So if something's changed on your end, let me know. Just because the landlord asked again, or just because you went to a sales meeting and your broker asked again, that doesn't mean that anything has changed. So follow up as much as you want. If I have new information, I'll give it. If I don't answer, I don't have new information.
That's great. And for you, Kaylann, you've got a big machine things have to go through, and I think Michael's question is for everybody.
Yeah.
So what's too much for calling you? Like, where's the deal? What's the status? What do we need to do? Big machine versus, Eric will tell you real quick where it is, I'm sure, but I'll let him answer that. But
Yeah, I mean, if you're calling me a bunch, Michael, I'm not managing your expectations. I'm not letting you know our process and when you can expect feedback. That's on me, and I feel like I would then need to communicate better to you.
yours are quick, I know.
We meet once a week, but we have lots of impromptu calls just to check on things. But again, like Brad said, if we talk on Monday, I might not have anything right away for you. So again, going back to, you're saving my time. When you get me on the phone or we have our weekly call, have your list, be organized. Let's talk about all of it, and not just the rent. Let's talk about the things that are sticking, because that's where I'm focusing on with my 2 people, or architect or engineer. What's holding us up? This big boat's got to turn. It's got to go a certain way. What's holding us up? So be prepared. Get the answer, and then don't bug me. Michael, you and I have talked before all the time. If you've got a problem, you can call me, but sometimes I'll have an answer that you like, sometimes not, but I'll try to be straight with you to whatever that is.
Good. Anybody else? I know we're standing in the way. You got beer early today, for God's sake. It should have sparred a little creativity. So, yeah, panelists didn't get a bit. We should have got you a lot of beers before this started, make it easy on you. I will say that I think our industry, our tenant rep part of the industry, at least that I can speak to, the biggest black eye I think we suffer from they've spoken to it many times, it's the broker that doesn't show up past the introduction of the tenant. I mean, we're being whittled on our fees because they don't want to pay our fee versus splitting it 50-50 with the landlord because the landlord broker thinks he's justified in getting half. And I get that. If you're landlord brokers, I appreciate that. But, if you don't show up after the introduction with your tenant, after the LOI is submitted, until you have your handout, want to know where your check is, you deserve whatever you get or don't get. That's just a horrible black eye on our industry. And if there's anything I would advise tenant rep brokers, you have to stay attached to the deal every single step of the way, and then a little bit more. If you're not just over communicating and checking where you need to be adding value, to your point, Brad, and managing the process and the flow, it may sit on Eric's desk because, you know what, he just overlooked it and it's sitting there. Well, you haven't called in 6 weeks. You didn't even know where the deal was, and still waiting for something from the developer and you haven't followed through on that. We are conduits of information. We sell information as brokers. We have to get it, we have to filter it, we have to vet it, and we have to deliver it. And when you're not doing it, you can't do that by a damned avatar or whatever Rod was talking about earlier. That is a face-to-face, and I'm all in. I get the whole AI thing you missed here, and thank God you weren't in here. But we're not sending an avatar or AI image of myself to communicate with Eric. I can tell you that for damn sure. But you got to show. It was now. I'd have to superimpose some other actor's face in that thing. But you have to show up. You just cannot, please, as tenant rep brokers, stop doing the lazy submittal, waiting and hoping. Hope's not a strategy. Everybody in my office knows I preach that. You have to stay attached to the deal flow, and you have to stay really sticky with your client, or they'll find somebody else to do their work on any of the sides of this. So wrapping up, is there anything I didn't ask you all that you wish I had, or somebody didn't ask from the audience? Or
I have a quick question.
Please.
Well, Rod, especially because you kept mentioning brokers chasing commissions, like you feel that. What percentage of your brokers would you say you experience that with?
Most.
No.
And there's a fine line, right? You're doing this to provide a living for yourself and those around you. I get that, and I want you to make money. But there are times, if I have a weekly call and the broker starts off by going through their list to manage what I did over the last week, tell me where we on this deal, what did you do here, did you do anything here, what did you do here? Here's a better way to do it. You need that information, and I get it, and you may need to report that in a sales meeting. But if you say, looking at our market strategy based on where we last left off, here's where we are, is that accurate? And here's what I did over the last week to try to help foster these deals and move things forward. That is such a breath of fresh air, because it's not that I'm so important or any of us. I don't have time to do all the deals. I'm working on 53 transactions right now in 12 different states. I don't have time to do everything on every deal. I will if I have to, but it'll take 6 months to get a deal done. If you tell me first what you did over the last week, you're managing the relationship and your value to me and helping me move my business forward. If you start managing to your pipeline and ask me, when is this going to be signed? Can you tell me when construction starts? What am I feeling? You're looking at the day you get paid. That's important, but it can't be primarily important.
And on the opposite side of that, I would tell you at Whole Foods, 0. And that's why our 38 brokers have had the account for 20 years plus, because I never feel that, which is great. And I appreciate it.
No, thank you. And I think what's part of that is, and just one second, I think what we benefit a lot from our clients at Falcon is we get behind the curtain really far, really early with all of our brands. I mean, we get as deep as they'll let us go. And I've gotten very far with Whole Foods except in research. They won't let me back there for whatever reason. They won't. But I know they're very strict about that, but we manage the process as much as our clients will let us, and that includes negotiating and drafting the LOIs, not negotiating without their input, but we manage redlining the document. We submit it. We pull all the needed documentation for real estate committee packages. I used to present to real estate committee at Petco for several years myself, so they could ask a question about the market and I can answer it right there instead of somebody wondering, well, we don't know, we'll have to ask the broker. So we do a lot of that, and I would say, Michael, you can correct me, but I think almost all of our brands, they let us get that intimate with their process, because we're an extension. We're the real estate arm for his company and her company, and we're managing the process with them. We're a team. We're not a vendor. So I think that's really important. If your brands will let you do that, I highly advise it, because now you're really managing what is needed. So sorry, Josh, go ahead.
No, just to follow up to Brad. So one of the things that we're seeing in our tenant rep business is the real estate directors are taking on more and more territory. So they're getting spread way thin. So one of our challenges, I do feel like I'm trying to follow up because they're the cog in the wheel that we are waiting for. So how do we help them? I mean, I understand they have like 90 trade areas or 53 deals, and sometimes we don't know how to help them because there's certain parts that we aren't open. You know, some of the groups, even to Ann, the attorneys in-house will box us out. We're not sometimes entrenched in that process. So we're trying to create value, but you know, you don't want to overstep either. So
It's a great question. I would say that challenge presents an opportunity for you to differentiate yourself. So as let's say I'm taking on more territory, and I am taking on more brands, which for me means more territory. The quicker that you can help me get to my goals in the market that you represent, the more that you can do, I will default and send more deals to your market than other markets. I absolutely play favorites with my agents, and when all other things are equal, I will shut down one market for a brand and give it to somebody else because I know it's faster and easier for me. That absolutely happens.
As part of over the years, once you get to know their process, their prototypes, their people, what they expect, that knowledge is so important for someone like you, because you step right into a void that's created by this rep who is being promoted or is given more territory or has to step in for somebody who gets ill. Whatever it is, you then are filling that void and it makes it happen. We always ask that question, what else can we do for you? Is there anything else that we can shift to our side of the development process? You know, do what you can. The more entrenched you are and the more value you create, that business is going to come your way.
great.
I'd like to add one more thing, if that's okay,
Please,
Tim.
of course.
So specifically for me, I've spoken a lot to the agent or the broker that is producing, that I'm interacting with. One thing for the brokers that are managing, if you're a non-producing broker, if you're managing other brokers, what culture are you creating in your brokerage? Sometimes without knowing it. If you're managing your agents and brokers to just their commission, and all you talk to them about is their pipeline and when they're going to close and what money's going to come in, that's important because you have to run a business and you need to know that. But if you're not helping your brokers by managing to the expectations of their clients, what does your client need? How are you fulfilling that? How are you providing value? Sometimes I think in brokerages, a lot of times from what I've seen, that happens is they're being managed to their pipeline and managed to the close dates, and ultimately what that turns into in the form of revenue for the brokerage, which again is important, it's necessary, that has to happen. But if that's the primary management tool or the primary conversation that's happening in your brokerage, unintentionally you're creating commission chasers, and it's felt.
Great advice. Okay, I can't thank each and every one of you enough for taking time out to do this. I mean, I've known you a long time, Eric, and thank you all so much for doing this. Thank you, Ann.